Hey there, welcome to CT Collectibles AMC. Hope you are doing well. We'll continue on with our off-season Hall of Fame tracker series with the third baseman today. I had a few nice questions. Appreciate the comments and everything like that, just regarding my methodology and my cherry picking, or why am I cutting certain dates off, certain players out. And so we'll try and cover that a little bit here. I'll give you a few examples. But again, this is not a science. There's a little bit of art involved there, and you just got to make a few assumptions. The wins above replacement and the way that we look at Hall of Famers today are not how they looked at them a long time ago. And I think everybody's starting to figure it out and getting on the same page. And it's not perfect by any stretch here, but I do have some recency bias. There's no question about it. But yeah, I'm not trying to manipulate data in any way to favor anybody, because I'm just hurting myself if I do that. I just want to make good decisions, or make decisions the best as I can here. So I try and take bias out of it. But anyways, we'll just get into it here. 19 third basemen are in the Hall of Fame. The average win above replacement Fangraph style is 68.35. It's a little bit higher, but similar with Baseball Reference. So when we do the analysis there's the overall numbers aren't terribly different. There's some discrepancies with individual players, but doesn't matter a whole lot here. So highest Fangraphs were 106, Mike Schmidt, class of 95. Most hits 3319, Paul Molitor. Most home runs 548, the aforementioned Mike Schmidt. 3000 hit club, Paul Molitor, George Brett, Wade Boggs, and the newly minted Adrian Beltre. 500 home run club, Schmidt, Eddie Matthews, and Adrian Beltre. So we're going to look at players elected by the Baseball Writers Association since 1978. We want to make sure we get Eddie Matthews in there. So typically I go back to 1980, 45 years worth of data. Again, small sample size, sure, but I think that's where people are just kind of figuring out who should be in the Hall or not. So average Fangraphs WAR is 84. Average Baseball Reference WAR is 78. Mike Schmidt, again, right in line with both of those. You look at guys like Adrian Beltre, and I think it's a Scott Rowland maybe, or something like that. There's some discrepancy, but they're in, so who cares? Average hit 2,700 hits. Beltre leads the pack with 3,100 hits. The average home run, so this is your average Hall of Famer. So compare these metrics to the guys that we look at and see if they can exceed some of these or whatever. So average home runs 362. Schmidt leads the way with 548. Average Gold Gloves, Robinson hogged it with 16 there, but if you can get to 5 or plus, then you're an average Hall of Famer elected by the Baseball Writers Association in the last couple decades here. Silver Sluggers 3.5. Wade Boggs has 8. Average All-Star games just over 10. Again, Brooks Robinson with 18 of them there, and the average Jaws. And that's where we take the best 7 years and divide it by their overall wins above replacement, and you come up with a number. And for third baseman's case, it's pretty high, 68.50. So a bunch of WAR monsters in this group here. So it's going to make it an uphill climb for our current day players. But again, I'll walk you through why I think you got to adjust the numbers in your head just a little bit here. So got a couple of players here: Pie Traynor on the left and Ron Santo on the right. And this is where Ron Santo got in the mid-70s. Pie Traynor was elected in the 40s. And by today's metrics, would Pie Traynor be a Hall of Famer? 38 wins above replacement, 2,400 hits. Weighted runs created, 107. Just a couple of All-Star games, but the All-Star game didn't start until pretty late in his career. But he was elected by the Baseball Writers Association in the 40s. And then you have Ron Santo with 70 wins above replacement, 2,200 hits, 126 weighted runs created, a lot of, like 8 or 9 All-Star games. Gold Gloves, things of that nature, and it took the Veterans Committee to get him in, and so the Veterans Committee, the Veterans Committee, and it's so when you look at this, it's like the metrics to get in have changed, and so I think when you look at the old timers, a couple of reasons the metrics to get in have changed, and when you compare them to their the replacement level player back in the day, you looked at that in the catcher video. It's not the same. The replacement level player today is just far better, and so you do have to, or you can ratchet expectations down a little bit by looking at who's gotten in recently and making a decision based off of that. So, anyways, when I come up with my X number to age 35 or something like that, this is what I look at here. When do they peak? Age 23. They start to put up some pretty good numbers for third baseman, and they start to fall off around age 35. And so I want them to get to a certain number by age 35. The average Hall of Famer has 68 wins above replacement. when you look at the players that have gotten in over the past couple of decades, Paul Molitor is about the lowest with 67 wins above replacement, but he has 3,000 hits, right? So then you look at Scott Rowland, who just got in with 70. So it's like, well, I want to get at least to 70. So if we can get to roughly that average of 68 by the time they're 35, couple of garbage years, get them just over 70, have some awards, and I think you got something. So that's my methodology on that. Just keep close to the average of who's gotten in recently, and then have at least some of the accolades that a lot of those guys have. And really, it's just going to be the top 1 or 2 players in each group here. So on the ballot this year, David Wright, 49 wins above replacement, 1,700 hits, and 7 All-Star games and a top 5 MVP. But injuries really took the wind out of his sails for the back half of his career. So this was a guy that was on the path, but he just wasn't able to hang on long enough here. So Jaws 40, so Jaws is used for people that don't have the longevity maybe that you would want. They didn't play 20 years or anything like that. So I think it'll come more into play as you're looking at the player's peak rather than longevity and how was their top best 7 years or whatever. And David Wright, had a really respectable 7 years, but it wasn't where a Hall of Fame third baseman is at. So I think there's fond memories of him, but I don't know how long he hangs around, but probably not a Hall of Famer. So some notables that are getting started or been around for a while and people are interested in. But again, this is for me to say, use caution, be mindful of what you pay for these cards, but not necessarily, so you look at like a Royce Lewis, 25 years old, 4 wins. And the pace, Hall of Famer at age 25 has 17 wins to his name. So he has to average 6.4 wins on an annual basis to get to that average number by the time the typical player starts to really decline. And so when he has these hot streaks where he's an MVP level player, it's like, well, just be mindful. Don't get caught up in the hype, right? So Junior Caminero just getting started. So he's on this list because he's really young, and so he's got a shot here if he can just come out swinging next year and produce for a long time. So it's like, well, that's someone I'd be at least interested in. But again, mindful of the price. And you look at him compared to the Jacksons this year or those other rookies. He's actually probably the most reasonably priced here. So, but yeah, Jordan Westbrook, same thing, 25 years old. He's a quarter of the way there. So, I'm not going to get too excited. Now, if he starts putting up 8-10 win seasons, it's like, okay, well, then I'll be more on board. And, but that's just one player there. I'm not having to buy all these guys, So, Brian Hayes, and a lot of people like him, 27 years old, 10 wins above his to his name, and he's 1/3 of the way on the pace here and has to average over 7. Most third basemen are peaking at like 6 wins, and well, on average, obviously you can get quite a bit higher here, but to average what the average peak is, that's tough. That's a tough deal. Matt Chapman, 31 years old, 38 Baseball Reference WAR, so that's a little bit of a discrepancy here. So he's well on the pace if you want to look at it in Baseball Reference term. Fangraphs, he's at like 31 wins above replacement. So, that's where I look at the discrepancies. I'll look at both of their numbers and, look at Fangraphs. It's like, well, geez, that doesn't look that great. But Baseball Reference, like, well, okay, wait, we're onto something here. Still off the pace of your average Hall of Famer, but a terrific bat. He had some injuries, but he's got an All-Star game, 5 Gold Gloves, a couple Platinum Gloves. And maybe over the next couple of years, if he keeps playing like he did last year, well, then maybe he can catch up this line and be more strongly considered. So it doesn't mean like you're in or anything like that. It's just like these are the guys who are going to be strongly considered. And for me, it's like, well, that's I'd be willing to put a little bit more money into something like that. So off the pace for now, and third base is really, really stacked, and so it's unlikely by any stretch, but. This is why you do this. So Nolan Arenado will start off on some of the more notable names here. So, he was doing everything right. 2020 slowed him down, like everybody. So again, how will this be treated? So he'd be probably along the line, but for now he's off the track a little bit here as he's 33 years old. 50 Fangraphs WAR, 56 Baseball Reference WAR, so he needs to average a healthy amount to get to that 68 by age 35. Again, Scott Rowland getting him 70, so we're not going to look at the 85 or 88. It's like, if you get there, great, but I don't think you have to, just by recent players getting in. 1,800 hits, so we need to add some hits there over the next 4 or 5 years. Home runs are fine, weighted runs created, but for him, 4 top 5 MVPs, 8 All-Star games, 5 Silver Sluggers, 10 Gold Gloves, 6 Platinum Gloves. He defined the position defensively, and that's what you want to do something to define your position, whether it's hitting, defense, or something like that. Pretty well-liked guy. Jaws is right in line. It's like, yeah, I think he can get in even with the Fangraphs WAR, the WAR numbers being a little bit lower than you would like. And so That's where the shoulder top computer comes into. It's like, well, the WAR, yeah, sure, he's not tracking, but he did these other things there. So it's like, all right, yeah, probably in at some point. It might be a little bit of a fight, but do you think he gets it? So Austin Riley, 27 years old, Fangraphs Baseball Reference, WAR in line for the most part here, and he's averaged just over 6 on an annual basis. He was hurt this year, but he's been a 5 or 6 win player, until this year. So let's see if he can get back on track. The bat is absolutely there. A couple of All-Star games, a couple of Silver Sluggers. Too young for Jaws to really matter. You're looking for your peak 7 years, and he hasn't played 7 years yet, so that number will improve. But yeah, no, he's tracking pretty well here, and let's see if last year's injury was a one-off, and see if he can get back on the track. But for now, he's a little bit below the trend here. Alex Bregman, 30 years old, with 40 wins to his name here to get to that 68 by 35. He needs to average 5.66 wins on an annual basis, so a little bit stronger level than what he's done, but he's capable. Came out with a couple of monster years. A couple top 5 MVPs in 2018, 2019, something like that. Probably should have got an MVP in one of those years. Got his first Gold Glove this year, but 2020 shortened season, and he was hurt a little bit, so he remains under the line a little bit. But again, it's an average. You can be above or below, and still be considered here as long as you're tracking it for the most part. But yeah, no, he's and that's what he's doing. He's tracking. Terrific weighted runs created. He can sure hit. He's a little bit pull happy, and the park helps him. But he's tracking, and his jaws, again, maybe he can improve that a little bit. So outside looking in, but definitely not out of the game here. So outside chances is what we're looking here. So Rafi Devers tracking very, very well. Just 27 years old, 25 wins to his name. 5.31 on an annual basis, which is very, very doable. Over 1,000 hits, 125 weighted runs created, 3 All-Star games, a couple Silver Sluggers, and again, that Jaws number will improve as he ages and puts up some more years. But again, here's another guy that's tracking pretty well, and is a decent third base target. But again, most of these positions, you're just going to have 1 or 2 guys at there. Could be low-level Hall of Famer or something like that. But if you're putting money into them, you want the generational type guys that are going to hold their value over time. But Devers, he's below the line, but he's at least tracking. So, all right, some of those big targets that we are talking about here. Jose Ramirez, 51 wins above replacement, age 31, needs to average just over 4, which is a cakewalk for a third baseman these days, and Jose should have no trouble with that over the next few years here. 129 weighted runs created, 1,500 hits, 4 top 5 MVPs, 6 All-Star games, and 5 Silver Sluggers. The Jaws numbers in line, and this is when you look at the names on that Hall of Fame list, Eddie Matthews and Brooks Robinson and Mike Schmidt and Molitor. It's just, it gets it's just like, gosh, those are some Wade Boggs. These are impressive names, and Jose Ramirez is doing just as well as any of those guys did in the at least the wins above replacement department, and he's sure picking up the hardware there. So again, who knows what happens, but if he just continues to do what he's done over the past few years, then he shouldn't have too much trouble getting his what color jacket do they even have? Do they even do jackets? I don't even know. So whatever, getting to the Hall. All right, Manny Machado, 31 years old. This is your number 1 target, I think, at the position. 53 wins above replacement, a little bit better in the Baseball Reference area here. 3.6 wins on an annual basis needed to get to that average Hall of Fame level, but he's not average, and he will probably be one of those guys that puts up close to 75 or 80. So 1,900 hits, we want to see that increase a little bit. The home runs are there, the weighted runs created, so he's a consistent bat. 4 top 5 MVPs, 6 All-Star games, 2 Silver Sluggers, 2 Gold Gloves, one of them a platinum level glove, in the Jaws right in line, are fairly close to the average Hall of Famer there. So you can see that he's came up early, produced, continued to produce, and he's above the line, which should indicate more of a generational than an average path there. So that's your number 1 target. I appreciate you watching. That's what we got for you now. We'll get back with some short stops maybe before Turkey Day, hopefully. But yeah, thanks for watching. Have a great rest of the weekend here, and we will talk to you later. Take care.